Okay, so I think I will begin. So hopefully my PowerPoint is going to be okay and my Wi-Fi, because my Wi-Fi is notoriously bad, even though I am sat half a metre from the router. We shall see. So hello everybody, my name is Helen O'Sullivan, and I am the founder of SustFashWales. It's really great to see so many of your familiar faces. Some I was with just on the weekend at the events in Swansea, and lots of people as well that I have never met, and I'm sure we're going to get to know a lot about each other very soon. So what I want to do is just to give you a reminder that we will be recording this session, because I know a lot of people booked tickets and couldn't actually make it. So if you don't want to be featured, then please just feel free to turn your cameras off. And that's when my PowerPoint starts making that funny noise. So I just want to go over the schedule for you. So first of all, we're just going to have a bit of a welcome chat, going over, what's going to be happening throughout the event tonight. And then at 5:10, which is just in a few more minutes, I'm going to do a very short introduction to SustFashWales. And then we're going to start off the event with Education Part 1 and then Education Part 2. Then we'll have a section on accessories, and then we'll have an optional break, or if you've got any extra questions that you want to ask any of the participants or any of the brands, then that would be a perfect opportunity to do that up until 6 o'clock. Then we'll have a short action from Repair Cafe Wales, talking about things that consumers can do to sort of look after their clothes. And then from about 6:05 till 6:45, we will have the fashion section. Then to sort of summarise everything, we've got AMC Newton from Creative Orange Studio, who will be presenting a short film all about making connections. And then we'll have a 10-minute sort of summary at the end, talking about some next steps, and then we aim to finish at 7. So, SustFashWales. I set up SustFashWales back in 2013, 2014, because I recognised the need for a source of decentralised and independent information for consumers of fashion. So for consumers of fashion specifically in Wales. And SustFashWales, I always feel, is a way of celebrating all of the amazing designers and makers that we've got in Wales. For many, many years, from about 2007, I started running fashion shows, showcasing a lot of my friends who are designers. But then I realized that there are actually quite a lot of designers, and there is quite a presence for sustainability within Wales. So I set that up. But what I want to do first of all is just talk to you about why I set it up before I go into more detail. So my background, well, I started my sort of sustainability journey many, many years ago, before I even knew what sustainable fashion really was. So I, as a teenager, loved to go to charity shops and chop up clothes and customize them. I was really fortunate to have a very talented grandmother, or a nan, she'd hate being called a grandmother, who taught me how to sew. And she passed on all of these skills to me. And I made my first skirt when I was 7, and nothing stopped me. So then I continued throughout my teens, sewing and repairing and customizing clothes, and I just absolutely loved it. And then when I was about 21, 22, I went to college and got actually trained in it. I moved to London not long after that, and I started to work for a company called Trade Remade. This was after a very short stint in the fast fashion industry. I absolutely hated working for the companies that I worked for, knowing what their practices were. So I went to Trade Remade provisionally as a kind of work experience for my HND, but they offered me a job as a pattern cutter, and then eventually the head of design, and I made the remade section. So it was basically what I was doing when I was a teenager, and I absolutely loved it. I also had a couple of fashion brands. Oh, sorry, there we go. And all of my collections have always been using sustainable or ethically eco-sourced materials. I set up a bridal company, but unfortunately I've had to stop that since I've returned to study last October. And for about 11 years, I've been teaching in community workshops, within colleges, in schools, in festivals, all sorts of different venues about, different sort of ways that people can look after their clothes or even start to make them themselves. Then I became a teacher 5 years ago, and you know, obviously because I've got the sustainability background, that's completely embedded in everything that I do within the school, and I've almost transformed the department to be put into sustainability right in the forefront of their curriculums. So SustFashWales basically encapsulates all of that, and in addition to that, I started a PhD in October of last year. It's a 6-year PhD, which looks at primary education rather than secondary or post-compulsory, to try and see if early intervention education around sustainability and design will actually, you know, encourage people to be more responsible when they become consumers later in life. So that is my background. And what SustFashWales does is it basically tries to connect the consumers with all of the amazing brands, designers, craftivists, and all sorts of other organisations here in Wales. So it's got the first of its kind directory on the website, which looks at the 4 main categories of buy, study, create and take part. It's the first of its kind in Wales, and my aim is that consumers will be able to go onto that website almost like a one-stop shop to help them to find out where they can shop and be more sustainable. In 2019, I began a long collaboration with Friends of the Earth Cymru to establish campaigns such as the Green Carpet Wales Challenge, which we actually repeated on the weekend, and also Resolution 6Rs, which both help to aim to help consumers to make informed choices about where the clothes come from and what they wear. I've also organised several fashion events, one of which was just the weekend just gone. I've been doing that since 2007, sorry. And as a secondary school teacher, I've also created a range of resources which I've made available on the SustFashWales YouTube channel. So these resources and videos cover everything from learning about the issues of the fashion industry, the supply chain, but then also lots of creative activities on, you know, how to basically become a more active or creative consumer. So everything from sewing a button on, to tie-dyeing, to revamp old clothes, all sorts of things. They're all on the YouTube channel. And then finally, I have also, don't know what's going on here. My PowerPoint has decided to not work. There we go. I've also more recently put a load of my school resources onto the website and made these available for teachers across Wales and indeed through the UK to help them to embed sustainability within their own curriculums. But that's enough about me and SustFashWales. You've all come here to hear about the wonderful designers and makers all across Wales. So what I'm going to do is just show you all of the designers that are going to be here today. So we've got Creative Orange Studio, which is at AMC Newton, and we've got Bridgend College of Fashion and Costume, Carpenter and Cloth, Elena Conti, Wear Not Waste, who will be talking about the student perspective. We've got Gosh Girl, Lesley Jane Jewellery, Lifeforms Art, and Esther unfortunately can't be with us today, so I'm going to be stepping in instead. We've also got Ophelia dos Santos, my pupils from Penyrheol Comprehensive School, Rainbow Heart Designs, Repair Cafe Wales, and a special pre-recorded message from Lynn at Rubbish Reinvented. So education part 1. I'm going to take a little breather while I just go out of my sharing so I can get my video ready. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. My PowerPoint is not happy. Okay, so I've got a video to show you, which I'm just going to load up on the screen. I'm going to turn up my volume slightly because some of the children are a little bit quiet and a little bit shy. And I hope you're excited to see this. They are absolutely thrilled that I'm showing this again. They think they're YouTube superstars now. There we go. So let's have a look. So there is no sound at the very first part, so don't be alarmed if you can't hear anything. So I'm going to hand over now to my Year 7 pupils at Penyrheol Comprehensive School.
You could tie-dye it, or you could cut the piece off that isn't stained and make something out of it.
We recycle it by dyeing it.
You can fix that, make new stuff out of them. You could either turning it into something else, or you could tie-dye with things like you can tie-dye with berries. You can make it a necklace, because you can wear clothes or t-shirt and run around out of jewel necklace, like a big
Ooh, like customizing. Yeah, that's a good idea, isn't it? Fantastic.
Like build it into bags and change it to whatever you want.
We're making pencil cases.
Excellent. And what have we been doing today?
This is a zipper to a piece of fabric, and we're going to be sewing them. I'm making a bag out of jeans, like the posters and it like this, and then we pinned it, and I'm gonna sew it like once I done with the pins.
Fantastic. And where did we get the jeans from?
We have to make our own bag out of old material and that.
Excellent. So what bag have you decided to make?
Bag one.
Bag one.
Like, so just buy a bag, so already got it, and you just have to wash it, and then it's easy, you can use it, you can reuse it.
We're making pencil cases and bags.
Excellent. And what materials are you using?
Denim.
Denim, yes. And they were from old jeans, weren't they?
Yeah.
So why do you think it's a good idea for us to use old jeans rather than get new fabrics? What do you think?
Might be bad for the environment.
Now I am trying to put this one in, but I'm trying to put it in the red line.
Excellent. So you've got some guidelines going along there that you've drawn.
So what I do every time is I put my thumb on where I'm poking it at, and then I make sure it's poking out safe, and then I let out, and then I lift it up, and then back down and back in.
Sewing up my bag right now.
Excellent. Can I have a look at your stitches? So you're doing this all by hand? Yep. That's amazing.
It is good because we are saving the planet.
So we don't waste materials.
and the school doesn't have to spend lots of money. And these jeans we got off the charity shop, they give routines for free. So it's all like that. So they give it to us for free for us to make new stuff out of it and to try to make good stuff for everyone. And it's also just saving the planet by not wasting clothes and just not wasting money.
Have posters and information about recycling and reusing in classrooms.
Sell them or recycle them.
You could make into a pencil case or a bag like we're doing.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. So yeah, that was my year 7 pupils. Absolutely loved doing that project with them. They were so enthusiastic. I think it was probably because they had such a long time remote learning, and it was just so nice to just get back into the classroom and actually do something creative. So what I would like to do, if you enjoyed that film, which I'm sure that you did, I did this at a conference that I presented this at a little while ago. I got a Google Docs form, and it would be really, really appreciated if anybody would like to send a message to my pupils. I'll just pop it in the chat now. And feel free at any point, whether it's later on, I'm sure they would love to see your messages. So I'm just going to have a little look. Yeah, some really, really nice comments already in the chat. So yeah, they were so good, and I find that doing hand sewing is really quite calming and relaxing. I do it a lot with my year 9 pupils because sometimes all of the hormones are a bit too much, and the stress of using a sewing machine can create this melting point of chaos of you know, in my classroom. So I tend to do a lot of hand sewing with them at year 9, but it's quite a new thing for year 7s, but they really enjoyed it. So I'm now going to hand over, because I'm going to present now the education, the second part, which we are going to have Joe from, oh, sorry, I'm just worried my chickens might be coming in. Joe from Bridgend College. If you were ready, Joe, I will let you hand over and share your screen.
Okay, let's give him a best shot. I know, you know what it's like, you're never actually sure, are you, if it's actually
Yes,
right.
all good.
Okay, can you see that?
We can.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm Jo Howecroft. I'm the course leader at Bridgend College for the UAL Level 3 Fashion and Costume course, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we try to incorporate sustainability into our teaching, what we do. I mean, what we do as a course, we're a level 3, so we're sandwiched in between, generally in between secondary. So I get some students who come straight from GCSE, some that come from A level. I get quite a few mature students every year. So I really do. I mean, I think I currently run between 16 and 57 age-wise. So it's a real broad mix of students that I get. And it's fashion and costume that we teach. It's probably slightly heavier towards the fashion. And I made a commitment, the course has only been running 4 years, and I made a commitment fairly early on that I would do a minimum of 1 project per year where we actually used existing materials. Part of that was actually because I was cleaning out my parents' house when they downsized and found that my mum still had all the stuff I'd made when I was 17 and 18. And it occurred to me that like the clothing never goes anywhere, that my students are probably likely to keep it, but that actually it's not really a good use of the raw materials and the fabric in the, you know, in that sense. So I thought, well, why don't we try and actually use something that's already there? So basically, this is kind of the premise of where I am. I try to inform. We try to reuse, upcycle where we can. We do 3 projects in a year. And actually, I find now that we're sort of hovering around 2 projects where we upcycle a year. And I also try to change how the students think about fashion. The image on the right there is actually Elena, who's going to chat to you afterwards. But some fantastic cyclical fashion she was looking at there, where she'd cut up the items, made one outfit, and then took it all apart and made another outfit. And if we'd have had more time, we felt that we could have kept going and seeing exactly what we could squeeze out of it. But some lovely subtraction pattern cutting going on there, which is a great way of kind of aiming for 0 waste. In terms of informing, I find that this film, The True Cost, I don't know who's seen it out there, but this gets the students. They absolutely get it. It really sparks up the debate. They can't believe what goes on in it. It's a great film to watch, and it's one that I always use to kind of kick off our conversation and sort of explain where I'm coming from. In terms of recycling, we do a denim project. This is usually sort of every other year. So this is some of my 2nd year work here. We do also try to kind of, so this is fashion, sorry, this is my thread there. This is costume. Here, we've actually been to charity shops and kind of gathered things ourselves that we've used, kind of, we've sprayed, we've painted, we've dyed, just trying to use every bit of it. I think that's the thing that we try and do with the costumes. We also enter competitions. So this is the skills competition Wales. We've actually entered that the last 3 years. We've been really lucky. We've had 2 out of the 3 students in the finals each of the 3 years. And this last one here, where we won with the design in the middle, basically that's 2 men's white shirts there. That's what they're given to kind of upcycle. And they get really creative with it. They do so well. The top right image is string. That's just been used instead of kind of piping cord. So we're really trying to use what we can find to make the outfits. This is some entries from the year before. And again, using upcycled shirts. We also teamed up with Emmaus, because the first year that we kind of went with the charity shops, we actually realized then that the charity shops have a lot of stock that they can't sell, that they sell for weight for shredded textiles. And so we teamed up with Emmaus, and they let us actually rummage through that. So instead of it actually going and just being shredded up, we were able to make exciting costumes out of it. And then we did a live shop window with them and a fashion show out in the street in Bridgend, which was great fun. But from my perspective, there's still a lot left to do. I think the big conversation for us is actually about our use. You know, how do we tackle that? How do I tackle it as an individual? You know, I've tried to buy less, but trying to talk to the students about the need to own less, the need to pay more for the clothing so it lasts longer. These are all really important things as potential future designers for them to kind of get on board with. And I think also something for myself that I've not really brought so much into the course. Yes, I'm using ends of rolls, old fabrics, old garments, but I've not actually brought sustainable fabrics in themselves. So there's so much more for me to do. I don't want to turn it into a solidly sustainable course, because I'm trying to balance all of it, because I think it needs to be balanced. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far. And Elena, I think, is going to come on and talk now. She's a former student who's actually started her own kind of sustainable and upcycling journey.
Anyone's got any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or pop it in the chat if you want to.
I have a question. I love that, Jo. I was just wondering, what are some of the questions or comments that you get from the students when you first introduce these ideas?
I think if I start with that film that I showed, The True Cost, I think one of the big things that they can't quite get their head around is the impact on other people. I think in that film there's it's very good the way that they do it, and they follow some workers over in India, Bangladesh, sorry, after the Rana Plaza disaster, and I think their eyes were opened. I think Rana Plaza had passed them by, and they couldn't get their head around the fact that it was, you know, over 1,000 people, or that people were having to live these kinds of lives where perhaps they've not got the money, they can't, you know, the young lady in the film has actually had to send her daughter off to a village because she can't look after her herself and work. And I think that particularly the younger students just were like, I can't believe people live like that, and people are living like that to enable us to have these clothes. It doesn't, that was really big. I think they just, it's not, I think it's quite normal for teenagers to often live in a smaller world, you know, because they're concerned with what's right in front of them. And then that's not just particular to them. I find that myself at times, and I've got my head in work.
Yeah.
But I think that opening their eyes to the impact everywhere, the impact environmentally, you know, they showed people on their cotton farmers in America, massive cases of cancer.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, whoa, it was just a real, and there's usually one or two people who are slightly teary each time as well, because I think it's very impactful, but it's good, I think, not to scare them, but to open their eyes in a positive way. Right?
Sure. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you.
My name's Elena, and I have set myself up as Elena Conti, Waste Not Wear. So if we go to the next slide, which is my sustainable makes. So my journey in Bridgend College started a couple of years ago now as a mature student. I've worked in the other side of fashion as well. So I've worked for very, very big companies churning out thousands and thousands of the same thing. No idea where a lot of it would have gone. It was never built to last. It was built to be disposable. And I suppose as much as I did some of the creative side, I did a lot of the money management side, which is basically nearly all of fast fashion is money management. So after taking 12 years out to look after my children, I decided to go back to college to learn the more creative side, almost like the slow side of fashion. The very first piece that we did, the project that we did with Jo, was the white shirt project, which is the yellow hood one there, if you can just about see it. And it was all about action. It was all about protest. And from the very first piece I made, it was upcycled. Looking back, I could have taken it even further. I use end of roll for the yellow hood, but there were ways that I could have taken it far further and used yacht fabric, or there were a lot of different fabrics that I could have used up. I then got the bug, really. We moved on to the next project, which was purely upcycling, which was a costume. And I just loved starting to take things apart. You know, the cloth that then became available to me, that was slightly damaged or older or not in fashion. You know, there's so many reasons why these things end up being thrown away by charity shops or discarded by charity shops, that everything I made from that point on was sustainable. Going then to my last project, which is the one that Joe showed you earlier, which was purely from rag. I challenged myself to only look at things that have been completely discarded. So not things that could have been worn again by people or whatever. This was stuff that the charity shops had chosen not to sell. And the next one shows you the journey of my final project. I kind of, if you see me with my boots there, I started off with a big pile of fabric. It's obviously been edited down because I wanted it to all tonally sit together. And most of the work that I do, I try not to always make the origins of it obvious. So I don't necessarily look to make something that has elements of the original garment in it. I did a lot of work on the stand. The sleeve that you can see there was one of maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 different incarnations that I tried to work with to make what I wanted to see. And then the 2 pictures of Lily there are the first outfit that I made. And that does look far more like what it was. It was basically a suit jacket, some of it, with a big zip up the back. The sleeves were tucked in and they became pockets. The shirt, you could see the origins of the shirt in there. And I worked and worked and worked on the stand to keep creating it until there was something that was coherent to me. I could have stopped there. I had made a finished garment, but for me, there was more. There was a greater depth that I could go to with that. So I took it apart, which when you're doing your final major project, to take apart what you've made was kind of like part of me that, you know, the deep intake of breath. What have I done? Am I actually going to be able to hand something in? This was a week and a half before deadline. And I decided to destroy what I had made, but it was so worth it. I then incorporated more of those fabrics that I looked at and made myself, in inverted commas, a piece of cloth, essentially, which is what you can see on the workshop desk there. And like Joe said, then I looked at subtraction cutting, which is taking the minimum out of that. So I worked on positioning pieces of cloth so that the hole that I created that was going to be the top of the dress was in a place where as many junctions, you know, where I couldn't get the fabric to work together to minimize what I was doing. And then finally, after all those twists and turns, I end up with my final piece, which was the dress that I made, which is there, which was my homage to Vivienne Westwood and everything else that she was. The sustainability runs through, but Vivienne Westwood runs through everything that I did in college. There's more that I could do. I still ended up with waste. I still ended up with stuff, but the fact that everything on there had little mothballs in it, it was thrown away. To see it made into something that is wearable or could be taken further. I see this dress as a prototype. I want to make more. I want to do more with this kind of dress and this look and things like that. And I think there's lots more to do with it. So that then takes me on to, I've obviously left college, I graduated in the summer, to my brand. So this is Elena Conti Waste Not Wear. And when I was rummaging through the rags and when I was starting to make the contacts with the charity shops, I am the hat lady with a lot of the charity shops in and around this area. People will save things for me that they know that I can work with. And otherwise I will just go knee deep in rag and find things that people have thrown away and I remodel them into hats. So the picture on the bottom there is my very first craft fair in Forage Farm in Cowbridge. Bales of hay and everything alongside me, and you know the reaction was really, really positive. I learned a lot from what people wanted, how people reacted to the hats. I also sell on Depop. And, you know, there's some pictures of me and my family out in a pumpkin field, living our best hat lives. But I love what I do. And I feel making the hats is just the start of it, and the support that I had from Bridgend College to open my eyes to the fact that I could look at things new, and I could build myself a business that fits around my lifestyle and where I am in life now has been so important. And I don't think I would have gone on that journey without Bridgend College encouraging me to experiment and to look at things differently. There we go. That's my little, if anybody asks any questions or anything they want to know about what I've done or my journey in Bridgend College.
Thank you, Elena. That was fantastic. It's really great to hear more. Like, we've met at the weekend, but no chance to talk, is there?
No, it's so busy. It's so busy.
Exactly. If anybody has got any questions for either Elena or Joe, please feel free to unmute yourselves or pop it in the chat. Or if you think of anything later, we will probably have some time at the end for questions. I will, while we're waiting, in case anybody's got any questions, I'm going to just start sharing my screen ready for the accessories section. Thank you so much, both. That was really, really insightful. Really enjoyed that. And let's see. Current slide. Anything in the chat? There's a question from Judy. I'm assuming this is for Elena. How does your family feel about wearing these recreations?
I have teenagers. Yeah, they do like them. They do love them. You can see my daughter was modeling some for me there. Yes, they do really, really encourage me. I have one person that's on Team Steam and help me iron. She's really good at that. And they love to wear them. You know, they love to see me doing something that they love as well, that I love.
We love them at college. We've all had one. They were our little payments at the end of the year. It was a little leaving gift. Was that Elena brought in her humongous stash and all the jumpers she hadn't used, and she was like, pick one, Joe. And then the model got to pick one, and Emily got to pick one, who's another lecturer. It was great. So it's kind of like a win-win for me.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the accessories now. And first up for accessories, we have Lesley Jane Jewellery. So if you would like to unmute yourself now, Lesley, and if you just pop me through the slides. This entire presentation's got, believe it or not, about 63 slides. So just give me a prompt when you want me to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll move straight on to the next slide, I think. Thank you. So I'm Lesley. I make jewellery from reclaimed and recycled metal, so reclaimed copper and recycled silver. And a lot of jewellery makers start in metals like copper or brass and then move up to precious metals when they get a bit more confident. But I actually did it the other way round. So I started making silver jewellery a long time ago, just as a hobby, never really intending to do it as a business. And I was given some offcuts of copper sheet and also some quite thick electrical cable by two different people, and I still use the electrical cable to this day to make bangles with. And I found the copper like a really exciting material, partly because I love the color of it, I love the way that you can shape and texture it very easily, but also I grew up in Cornwall, which has got a long history of metal mining, just like parts of South Wales has. and you can't help but be conscious of the impact that has had on the landscape, the environment, and the risks involved in getting metal out of the ground and processing it. So it was really important to me to sort of use all the metal as responsibly and carefully and thoughtfully as I could and make the best use of it. And over the years, I've been really lucky that people have given me lots of different sorts of scrap metals. So you can see in this infogram, there's some copper pipe. I was given loads of copper pipe by a microbrewery at the studio where I used to work. And the electrician there used to leave bits of copper cable on my doorstep and so on, and all sorts of different things like that. And so it's a great free resource for me, but obviously there's work then, there's time and effort to process it and turn it into metal that I can use. But once you've done that, and you can use it just like any other metal sheet or wire that you bought newly produced. So I won't go through the detail of my process, but you can see from this infogram, there's usually some heat involved in processing it and cleaning, and then you just cut it out and shape it and decorate it. And there's if you want to see a little bit more about my process, I've got some reels that I've just put on Instagram as well, on my Instagram page, that will show you a bit more about how I use that. So on the next slide, there's something that's the source of material that I find really exciting. So a couple of times I've been past junk shops, and in the bargain bins outside, there's been silver plated copper trays where somebody's completely polished off the silver layer on the top. So there's in the top left and the top right, there's two different trays where somebody's just kept polishing until there's no silver left. And when you find things like that, you just and I'm sure the other people working in very different materials feel the same, you get so excited about the potential of it. So you can play with the textured engraved copper side, and then on the underside, usually there's people don't polish the underneath of trays very much, so there's a good layer of silver plate still, so you can kind of juxtapose the shiny silver and the textured copper, and with this and with the copper pipe and everything that I use, I would cut out the larger pieces first. So for the cuff here, for trinket dishes that I make, Christmas decorations and so on. And then from the pieces left over, you can cut out slightly smaller things like pendants, and then little tiny discs for earrings and so on. So that at the end, all I'm left with is just shards of quite sharp metal that I collect up. And with the silver scrap that I've collected over the years from when I started making jewellery, you can melt it down really easily in the studio. So with a blowtorch, silver melts at just under 900 degrees. So I can melt it in my studio, roll it flat, and then use that again and keep using. And if something doesn't work, you can melt it down and use it again. And what I'd like in the past, I've collected up my copper scrap and sent it away to a scrapyard or something. But what I've been saving it up recently, and what I'd like to do sort of moving forward, is find a way to melt that down as well, because copper melts at a higher temperature. So you can get quite good little electric furnaces now that you can melt down copper. So sort of hopefully next year I can start doing that and reuse and kind of using even more of the material. And there we are, there's some contact details. And as I say, there's some if you go to my Instagram page, there's some reels that show the process of, and show me in my studio turning some copper pipe into some enamel jewellery.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was lucky enough to see some of Lesley's work on the weekend. Unfortunately, let's not talk about the catwalk, which didn't arrive, thank you to my postie. But yeah, it's absolutely stunning work. That is such intricate work as well, isn't it? Like you really need to, I think a photo doesn't do it justice. It's really, really stunning. So does anybody have any questions for Lesley? Let me just open up the chat, which is beautiful. Everybody's just saying it's beautiful, which it definitely is.
Thank you very much.
Has anybody got a question, or you can save them up for the end if you like, or we will move on to Rubbish Reinvented. It might give you a couple of minutes to ask any technical questions. This is definitely, as a design and technology teacher, I would love to get some more metal work in and do something like this, but yeah, we shall see. Right, I'm going to move on to Rubbish Reinvented. So Lynn isn't able to be with us tonight, so she has pre-recorded a message, and hopefully, now I've not actually tried to do, yes, it is allowing me. So I'm going to play the video. This is her in the side here, and hopefully this is going to work because I've never actually done this via Zoom before.
Hi there, I'm Lynn from Rubbish Reinvented. I'm pre-recording this because I can't be with you in person. So I'll try and make this as clear as I can. So I started recycling plastic bags about 10 years ago now. So I've been running Rubbish Reinvented for that long. And I started by making a bag for myself, and I took it to work, and people were fascinated with how it had been made. So they encouraged me to go further. So I took it to craft fairs, and then I started to get commissions, and I've been into schools teaching recycling plastic bags and explaining what I do to them, workshops and such like. So with COVID though, it's been really difficult over the last 18 months. So I'm hoping to go forward now, and I can see a way forward after COVID, maybe, that I'll be able to run workshops again and be in person with people instead of teaching on Zoom, because I've had to learn quite a lot of new technology and I'm not really comfortable videoing myself for this, but here I am. So we can only start from somewhere. So a little explanation of what I do then. I shred plastic bags. So I don't know if you can see that. I cut them into strips then. I cut the plastic into strips and I thread it together like this to make yarn. So it's quite time consuming. It's quite therapeutic. I get quite a lot of donations and I take donations. So if anyone wants to donate me plastic bags, I'm all for having them. So it's very strong. You can put it as much as you like. It's waterproof. It can be used for many, many things. And then I will get a ball like this after a while. And yeah, then I proceed to crochet my patterns, which are all designed by me. Mostly they're in my head. So it's quite time consuming. But then I live next to a beach and I don't like seeing plastic on the beach, which is what inspired me to do it in the first place. So if you're interested, you can get in touch with me on social media, through Instagram, through Twitter, through Facebook. I'm also on Pinterest, and I will answer any queries you have. I'll take on any commissions that I'd be able to do, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Oh, that's great. She's great. She was at our pop-ups on Sunday and she sat there crocheting all day. It was just so relaxing just watching her. So I'm sure she'd appreciate any questions if any of you have got any questions for her. She's got really, really great following on Instagram, actually. I think it's about almost 12,000 followers. So, but she's always got time to answer questions. So just give Lynn a shout if you've got any questions, or if you want to give me some feedback for her, I'm happy to pass it on. So now we are going to move on to the action section of the evening with Phoebe from Repair Cafe Wales. So I will hand over to you, Phoebe.
Thanks, Helen. Hi everyone, I'm Phoebe. I run Repair Cafe Wales, and Helen has very kindly squeezed me into tonight's agenda, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to tell you about what we do across communities in Wales. If you could go on to the next slide, thank you. So we run pop-up repair cafes all over Wales. I think there's about 50 of them now, and a repair cafe is essentially an event that runs in a community where people can come in and have their things fixed for free by volunteers to stop those items being thrown away. We fix all kinds of items, but I'm just going to focus on the kind of clothing and textile repairs that we do for this evening. So as I said, we stop items being thrown away, and we try and encourage people to kind of reevaluate their relationship with their stuff. So we tend to find that if someone has come into a repair cafe and they've sat down and they've watched that item be fixed, and they've seen the time and the effort that goes into having that item fixed by one of our wonderful volunteers, they feel a lot more connected to that item, and they're less likely to kind of discard it and throw it away in future. But also it lasts longer because it's been repaired, and then people need to buy less new stuff as well. A big part of what we do is getting people to kind of sit down with their volunteer and to watch that fix take place. One, so that they kind of see all of the work that goes into an item being mended, but also so that people start learning how to fix for themselves. Because what we find with a lot of our events is there's a real often generational skills gap with the kind of difference in how people have been brought up. I know that I've been brought up with, you know, fast fashion and not fixing and not sewing and mending my own clothes, and often lots of our volunteers try and kind of pass down those skills and share those skills, so that people can then learn how to do it for themselves in future. And kind of see how easy it is. So often we have people come along and have an item fixed, and hopefully they go away knowing how to thread a needle or sew a button on, or even fix a zip. And every time they come back, they can build up those skills as well. If you go on to the next slide, please. Oh yeah, so these are our core values. So obviously it's a huge amount of what we do is about reducing waste, so stopping people throwing those items away, either because you know, they've been mended, but people also come in because they can't afford to buy new. So it might be from an environmental perspective that they come into a repair cafe, but it also might be from a kind of economic need perspective as well. So they can get more use out of those clothing items, those textiles items, by having them mended. As I mentioned, we're big on sharing skills. I think it's really, really important to teach people kind of how to repair for themselves, and so that they can start obviously passing those skills down to their friends or their children or their neighbours as well. And then another kind of final part that we do is about community cohesion. So there's something really, really lovely about a repair cafe event. People come together from all walks of life and for a variety of different reasons into a community space once a month, have a cup of tea, there's usually cakes and biscuits, and just kind of get quite hands-on. And, you know, Helen touched on it with her Year 9 students. It's really therapeutic to kind of sit and do something with your hands and to fix. And we find that in repair cafes as well. It's just very calming to just sit there and repair something and feel that kind of connection to your items again. So they really, really bring people together, and they're really a really brilliant way of tackling kind of stress and mental health issues, and improving people's well-being. Next slide, please. Oh, this one was just to show kind of we seem to be popping up everywhere at the moment. So we started with just one repair cafe in Cardiff, and we've got them all over Wales now, and it's lovely to see kind of communities embracing repair more and more, and becoming more popular, and people kind of starting to shift their mindset in terms of kind of what they do with their items and how long they make them last. And then finally, I've just left our social media links up there, just because this has been a very brief overview in case you wanted to kind of check out more of what we do, and I'm happy to take some questions as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Phoebe. Such a very, very short introduction to all of the amazing things you do at Repair Cafe Wales. So if anybody has got any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or pop them in the chat. And like I said earlier, there's plenty of time to do this later as well if you want to. If not, I will get my slides ready, and we are going to be starting the fashion section. Any questions? Nope. If you do, you can always come back to it later. So we're going to start off with Ophelia dos Santos. If Ophelia is ready, it would be great if you could unmute yourself and prompt me through your images.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Everything okay?
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Let me just mute myself so we don't get an echo.
So I'm Ophelia dos Santos. I am a Welsh textile designer and climate activist based in Cardiff. I actually have a little unit, like workshop unit down in Cardiff Bay in Royal Stuart Warehouses, if anyone knows what that is. So I specialize in hand embroidery, and I refresh, repair and repurpose pre-loved clothing. I've established a denim kind of patchwork style that I've kind of developed over the last few years since leaving university. I tend to express myself with simple stitches that create images and patterns on garments, and yeah, I hope my work serves as kind of a visual reminder of fashion's changing attitudes towards sustainability. And also inspiring people to also give old clothes a second chance. And through my online platform, I create educational content to inform and encourage conversation around sustainability, overconsumption and equality. There are huge overlaps and intersections between like fashion and like social justice, especially because most of the people that are kind of impacted the most by climate change are Black and brown people. So yeah, community and skill sharing are probably at the heart of my kind of artistic practice, as I use my projects to engage with the wider community and provide people with the tools to explore their creativity. So I facilitate workshops with local organisations and charities based in Cardiff. Recently, I have worked with South Riverside Community Development Centre for a series of workshops over 10 weeks. And also with Jukebox Collective, I did one over the weekend. We had a kind of like a creative festival. There was like music, food. I kind of did drop-in workshops, so it was really nice to kind of have that in-person engagement for once, because it's just been so nice to like actually see people and meet people. And yeah, it's quite surprising that so many young people could really just like get into it and focus. I think they're always surprised by how much they enjoy embroidery. And it's so nice to see, especially seeing some of the boys, the younger like teenage boys, get involved with embroidery. Some of them, so because it was drop-in, some of them actually just stayed there for hours working on stuff, and I was like, whoa, like I think yeah, it's great, especially because like textiles and even sustainability in general is quite a space that is reserved for older white women maybe as well. So I've tried to make my projects accessible and inclusive. I think in environmentalism in general, the language is quite complicated, so it's not always easy for most people to get into. So I think embroidery and just learning how to sew and have very basic skills are a entry level kind of skill into living a more sustainable life. What else? So as well as my work in fashion in the third sector, I have kind of followed my interest in writing and filmmaking. I made a film recently with BBC Cambrian Wales called Moving to Make It, and it's on iPlayer, so I'll have to send you guys the link. It's a short documentary film about the pressures on young creatives in Wales to leave Wales to pursue careers elsewhere, for cities more renowned for fashion or art, such as London. It's kind of a dilemma that I had leaving uni. I was like, oh, I have to be in London to have a successful career in the creative industries. And it wasn't until the kind of lockdowns of last year that I was really forced to engage more with the community that I was in and to network amongst other Welsh creatives. I think I'd probably been a bit ignorant beforehand. So yeah, in this documentary, we talk to some of my family members and other creatives in Wales. I come from a very creative family. My grandfather was a carpenter and a musician. So he actually worked at the National Museum, and he did like furniture restoration and stuff like that. And my dad is a stonemason, so he can do like stone sculptures. He's worked on museums, churches and stuff like that. So I think me doing such a traditional craft like embroidery wasn't really a surprise. I've grown up around these very like specialist trades. So yeah, I take inspiration from them. And yeah, like I'm very lucky that my family encouraged me to follow my creativity, because it's opened a lot of doors for me, even though it's a bit scary being self-employed and you never know where your money's coming from. But I've found plenty of opportunities in Wales, I am happy to say. So yeah, I will leave it at that because I don't know how much time I've spent. So this was the event on Sunday, by the way. So I put my work up in like these frames to kind of show that old clothing can become artworks. It's even if they're not worn, they're artworks. I always keep my upcycle pieces because I think I have that kind of attachment to them. I don't sell a lot of things. I didn't want to be a brand that just sells things. I try to use my voice for advocacy and give people the skills so they can upcycle themselves. And yeah, that's what I do. Any questions?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I particularly really loved what you were saying about young boys, because I find that in my school, actually, that the boys tend to be somewhat more enthusiastic than the girls, which it's such a gendered divide normally in our D&T department. But I find that actually, particularly with the hand skills, they love doing it. They absolutely love it. And they get so, proud of what they've done as well. So I'm loving seeing those gender stereotypes being broken down. So
yeah, it's great. I mean, I think when they get a bit older, like my friends that are my age, I'm 23, they come to my workshop and I'm like, I want to get you sewing. I get everyone to sew if they come into my workshop, even if like they're really unsure about it. But some of them are so like violent with it. I'm like, you don't have to do that. And they're like, oh, let's get it. I'm just like, you don't need to do it like that. Should I just answer some of these questions here?
I can see them. Go for it.
So where do I see myself in the future? Honestly, I don't know. I think I'm very open-minded to see where things go, because a lot has changed in the last year and I never really saw myself teaching. I definitely want to become more of a service and a community space rather than a fashion brand. I have this internal battle with like not wanting to produce things. So like, I don't want to add to the problem of overconsumption, and I don't want to be discouraging overconsumption while selling things, because it just seems a bit hypocritical for me. But I do take like commissions, so I will upcycle old clothes. I never really work on anything new. Yeah, I don't know where life will take me. We'll just see. Let me have a look. And yeah, I always have workshops coming up. I don't know off the top of my head what's next, but I've been working a lot in the Grange Pavilion with Jukebox Collective, so it's most likely it'll be there. But I always keep my socials updated with all of my workshops, and they're always free. So yeah, you can come along, you can bring something that you want to upcycle, and it's really chill. There's a nice vibe. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. We've always got time for questions at the end, so if anybody thinks of anything in the meantime. But now I'm going to hand over to Rainbow Heart Designs, if you're ready. Oh, my PowerPoint's not ready.
Thanks, Helen. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Jenny from Rainbow Heart Designs. I've only just got a couple of slides to go through. So the first one there has just got my Etsy link, and you can find me on Instagram as well. I'm based in Cardiff. Not originally from Wales, but it's very much become my home. So I'm super pleased to be kind of networking with all the other lovely Welsh sort of fashion sustainable people that are here today. A bit on my background, not really kind of from a fashion background, but I have always been really interested since day dot in making clothes, buying secondhand and vintage and altering things. Not really coming at it from a sustainability side, but sort of originally coming at it just in terms of being able to wear what I want, being creative, getting hands-on and kind of fiddling about with textiles. So it's always been in the background for me. I've always had a sewing machine knocking about, even if, you know, at periods it's been a bit unloved for a little while when other commitments have kind of come to the forefront. And then about 2 years ago, I changed careers. So I had been previously working in TV production, which didn't leave time for anything else, you know, even to kind of catch my breath. I did a bit of a career shift and found myself working for a charity who we focus on responsible business. So we have a network of businesses that want to become more responsible, and that's in all sorts of things to do with their staffing, the way that they, you know, treat people, and also their environmental impact and the way that they deal with their supply chain. And so the two things kind of came together, having a little bit more headspace, being a bit more immersed in understanding the issues about how businesses can have an impact, positive instead of negative, in the way that they operate, and just getting itchy fingers really to get back on the sewing machine. It all sort of came together, and I started focusing on making children's clothes. And I looked at whether I might be able to launch that as a business, and I knew that I wanted to do it in a way that was certainly not not that you can mass produce from your kitchen, but, you know, sort of being mindful about some of the environmental impacts that I might be having or not having. So I looked to focus purely on organic fabric. So it's really, the idea is that it's an option there for people who want to buy something new, but they want to know that what they're choosing has been created in a way that has bypass some of those worst impacts. You know, the fabric has got certified, so it's more traceable. It's not as you know, it's come from a more ethical background, and everything's handmade, so that, you know, you've cut out any of that kind of the nasty labor practices that have gone on at that stage. Do you mind going on to the next slide, Helen? It's my last slide, and it's just got some photos of the kind of thing that I've been doing. So as a business, my challenges so far have basically been that I'm really, really, really new and really green. So I'm feeling my way through it. I'm still working alongside the day job. So ultimately, I'd love to be able to do this a bit more full time. But right now it's a sort of side desk, kitchen table project, which I'm absolutely loving getting stuck into. But it is really small scale for me at the moment. Other challenges, I think it's hard to know what not to do. So I might not be the only person here that has this problem, but I'm a bit like a kid in a sweet shop when it comes to beautiful fabrics, and especially when you're thinking about children's wear. For me, the prints and the sort of options and, you know, the beautiful colors and the ideas. And so for me, my next steps have got to be kind of thinking about being a bit more strategic and a little bit more streamlined, because I have been a bit sort of scattergun up until now, which is really hard not to be. So that's my plan for the future with the brand, really, is not to scale up hugely, because it's just not possible. It doesn't fit with what I'm trying to do at all. I'm hoping that these things are pieces that are kind of, you know, mindfully made, long lasting, will be passed down from child to child in the best way, become kind of hand-me-downs through siblings and cousins and that kind of thing. I am trying to streamline what I do. I'm looking at options. So at the moment, all my fabric is new but organic. I'm looking at possibility of using reclaimed fabrics. Men's shirts have yielded me some beautiful fabrics for stuff that I've made myself. I haven't used any of them for the dresses, but, you know, sort of unwanted old men's shirts in like linen and brushed cotton and stuff are a brilliant source of fabric for me. So I'm looking at how I might be able to incorporate that into a different collection. I'm also really keen to incorporate some natural dyes and my own block printing. But again, the challenge I've got is to kind of rein it in and know where to be strategic and pause and kind of focus on one thing at a time. So yeah, that's me. Happy to take any questions. At the moment, you can find me on Instagram and on Etsy. And yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody else who'd like to know more. Thanks.
So anybody got any questions? I can see Amy has mentioned looking at zero waste pattern cutting. And I think that would actually be quite a good tip for children's wear, because especially looking at the dresses with all the pleating and the gathering, there could be ways where you could incorporate, no waste within your pattern cutting, just by basically pulling it all together and gathering. So that's a good top tip from Amy there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And I do try really hard, like part of the thing that takes me the longest really is planning out the pattern pieces to kind of minimize the waste. And then I should have said here, but I do make things like scrunchies as well out of any pieces that are, surplus really, so that the very minimum is going to waste.
Yeah, definitely. And everybody loves a scrunchie. They're so popular with teenagers at the moment. It's like, what's happened? It's like
long may it continue.
I know, because I think that's what we're all doing with our scraps at the moment. Okay, thank you so much. That was fantastic. It was lovely having you at the pop-ups as well, because little representation of children's wear is quite a unique thing. So you're doing excellent, fantastic. So next we have got carpenter and cloth. Oh, have we? I put that in the wrong order, I just realized. And my connection is unstable, it's telling me. So fingers crossed. I might turn my video off. Do you want to go carpenter and cloth, or shall we?
I don't mind. I can go now if it's easier.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Right.
I did have Lifeforms Art, but I'm not sure what's happened to those slides. Hang on. Yeah, so I'm going to turn my video off and I'll hand over, and I'll just see what's going on with my slides. Okay, off you.
Okay, have you got my PowerPoint stuff, my slides?
I'm still muted. Yes, I do. I will move through. There we go.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right. Okay, so Carpenter and Cloth is an umbrella name for a micro community of makers, of whom I am part of. We live and work together near Llandovery in Carmarthenshire. But today I'm going to focus on my area of the business, which is, of course, cloth. So next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm passionate about creating garments that are infinitely wearable. I use strictly natural fibres because as a maker, I believe I have a responsibility for the life cycle of my garments right to the end. I offer repairs and I endeavour to engage my customers in the story of their garment. I'm going to cut a very long story short, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of how I got to what I'm doing today. So next slide. So when I began dressmaking professionally in around 2008, I was already very passionate about using Welsh wool and particularly Welsh flannel. I saw this as my indigenous cloth that would connect people to their clothing, where it came from, and as to their environment as a result. These are some Welsh flannel trousers that I produced as part of Llinfi, which was a women's wear collection from around 2010. Next, please. So this is more flannel. I wanted to try and see, I wanted to push flannel away from the classic plaid shirt and was really enjoying the challenge, but was saddened by the unavailability of Welsh wool fibre for fabric. Most of the yarns for Welsh flannel actually come from Italy or Turkey. So I started a project to try and get hold of Welsh fibre in fabric. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so with the help of many people, the Cambrian Mountains Wool Project was conceived, and we were able to produce an entirely Welsh wool cloth. It was heavier than the flannel that I had been using, but it was harder wearing, but it made great outerwear. This is a jacket that one of the first designs that I produced using this cloth. But next there came a pause in my Welsh wool collection because, next slide, I had a family, ta-da! And so the time pressures of being a mum and trying to produce my own collection were just overwhelming. So I stepped back and I took on commission work instead, which actually was amazing because it taught me so much more about why I wanted to do clothing. So next slide, please. A lot of the commissions that I took on were very personal projects, sentimental things like wedding dresses. I also did memorial quilts, and I did sort of altering and mending of a lot of very special garments for people. On the next slide, please, so this is a work jacket for a customer who was tall and slim and could never find anything to fit. And ordinarily he wouldn't spend a lot of money on clothes. You know, he was a kind of committed charity shopper. But considering that this jacket was going to be worn every day for many years, made the cost per wear, even of a bespoke garment, actually extremely reasonable. And that was the concept that really stuck with me. And in fact, what all of the different commissions taught me over those years was that the value of clothes is in what they mean to the individual. And if I can nurture that connection, then it becomes more acceptable to pay a higher price for a garment. Customers take greater care of their garments for longer, and what those garments give back to the wearer, psychologically and emotionally, I think enriches your day-to-day experience and also satisfies your clothing needs with far fewer garments. So next slide, please. So I began to think of developing my own range again, and I realized that not only did my product need to be sustainable, but I had to build my business in a really sustainable way for me as well. So I thought, what if I made just one garment? And considering all the things that I had learned, and I was still very passionate about being part of the Welsh wool industry, I developed the Cambrian gilet. I wanted a garment that was going to enrich my life. I needed it to be something that I would wear all the time, and I wanted to make it out of materials from our environment for living in our environment. Essentially, I was considering Indigenous clothing and what British Indigenous clothing might look like today. Next slide, please. So the popularity of the Cambrian gilet encouraged me to continue on that path, and I developed the Welsh wool hoodie next, which is made from Jacob's wool and lined with organic cotton fleece. Next slide, please. This summer, I added Irish linen to the collection. This is our dust jacket in the long and short styles. The fabric's really soft and drapey. It's still really hard wearing. It's a twill, which is comprised of European flax and recycled cotton, and it's woven in a mill in Northern Ireland. Next slide, please. So next, I'm currently waiting for a new wool fabric for our winter shirts. I've decided to move away from Welsh wool for this particular garment because Welsh fibre just isn't soft enough to wear next to the skin. So I thought, well, if we're going to import cotton for shirts and underwear, then we may as well import fine wool, but then get it woven in Wales, supporting our own weavers, to produce a base layer cloth that's going to really keep us warm through the winter. Next slide, please. yeah, so this autumn, there are a couple of events coming up. We're going to be at Makers Market at Farmers, which is the Welsh lavender farm near both Wells, on the 6th and 7th. And then later in the month, we'll be at Wright's Food Emporium in Llanarthony, which is near Carmarthen. Next slide, please. That's just, yeah, that's us. That's our social media. We're at Carpenter and Cloth, and we've got a mailing list on our website, carpenterandcloth.com. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. So this would be a great opportunity if anybody has got any questions for Emily. That would be great. Pop them in the chat or unmute yourselves. You've got a question.
Who's my typical customer? It's usually someone who, I would say age-wise, between 40 to 60. It's usually someone who's got a fairly good income and they're willing to spend a bit more on their clothes, and they are at a point in their life when they really know what they want. So they're prepared to invest in something that they really want. And they're also people who want to invest in something that's really British, that supports skills, traditional skills that we have in our country, and craftspeople. I would say often they probably are more rural dwellers than they are kind of urban dwellers, but that's not necessarily always the case.
Thank you. Any other questions, or shall we now introduce Lifeforms Art?
Could I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it's just I wanted to find out more about Welsh wool industry, especially in terms of fashion, and whether that's a growing concern now, or is there just a limited area where this is happening?
It's still very difficult to get Welsh wool fibre that is woven into cloth because of the way the woolen industry works. So all of the wool from the UK is baled together, and it's divided according to the quality of the wool. Most wool from the UK is actually used for carpets and insulation because it's too coarse for fashion fabrics. But yeah, there are still weavers in Wales. There's a few weavers left in Carmarthenshire that are actually doing really well. There's more and more interest in having fabric produced in the UK and in Wales. And actually it's becoming more reasonable because since we left the EU, it's becoming increasingly expensive to import materials. So actually, I think that it's going to grow. I think that the textile industry in Wales is going to grow.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Is there any avenues in which we can explore ourselves if we wanted to go and find out who's doing what near where we are? Or
yeah, I mean, there's the mill in terms of like buying fabrics, or what is it you're
just in terms of looking at buying fabrics and seeing how it's woven together and all that, the practicalities?
I would start at the Welsh Woolen Museum at Drefach Felindri. I think that's a really good place to start. They have a working flannel mill next door as well, so I think that would be a good, and they do sell some of their own stock fabrics.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Can I just ask on the back of that, do you find if you have worked with Welsh weavers that you've had to order quite, I was going to say quite a lot. Obviously, if someone's a small concern, we're not talking about hundreds of meters, but do you find that you still have to order or commit quite a reasonable amount? Do you know what I mean, in terms of how much you might actually need?
Yeah, I think that you can order as little as 30 or 40 meters, which, you know, is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, any weaver really wouldn't produce less than that, you know, to commission.
So really thinking about what you said with the fibres, if you're interested in trying to use local wool in inverted commas, you're actually more likely to be using British wool,
yeah,
rather than Welsh, just simply because it's all been homogenized, I suppose. It's all been put in together, isn't it?
It's just very difficult to get hold of that quantity, because you also, it's not just about the weaving, it's to do with the spinning as well.
Yeah.
So to make it, I mean, there is, I don't know if he's still going, but curly weavers used to spin and weave, but you're looking at getting a lot of raw fibre together to make it viable.
Yeah.
And on a small scale, what you'll find is that it is extremely expensive, kind of prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up with a fabric that at cost is about £70 a metre, and that's before you've added any other value to it.
Yeah, exactly, and it just changes.
So
you need a whole of the market at that point, don't you?
Oh, different like ball game. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Your stuff is awesome, and I love the thought and the feeling behind it. The trying to get people to connect. I think that's a really important way of trying to encourage people to change how they think about the clothing, is by improving that connection and feeling something for it, you know.
Yeah, sure. I one of the comments that I used to come up against was that you know, people would look at the wool and then say, oh, but you have to, oh, you can't tumble dry it, and oh, but you have to wash it by hand. And it's like, but it's okay to have to take care of your clothes and spend time with them, and it makes you appreciate them a bit more, I think. So yeah, I'm all for that kind of having a relationship with your clothes.
I think so, and I think also even just washing, that's a hands-on kind of scenario, isn't it?
Yeah,
and I think
it is.
that kind of handling and spending time, and it's going to sound weird caressing it, but that is effectively what you're doing, though, isn't it? If you're washing.
Yeah, that's what they're for, isn't it? Clothes are you know, you caress them and they caress you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. It's been lush.
Oh, pleasure.
Thanks, Emily. Definitely about changing a mindset to our clothes. I think that's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, right, thank you so much for that. I'm going to now share my screen and invite Lifeforms Art. And again, if we've got any questions that you want to ask at the end, we should have some time to do that. So I'm now going to welcome Lifeforms Art. I'm just going to go into full screen mode here so we can see all of your amazing pictures. And this is another interesting stand that we had at the pop-ups on Sunday. Everybody just loved watching you just sit there, draw. It was just so relaxing, so therapeutic, and I can't wait to hear more.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute honour to be amongst the people we've just seen and I presume are about to see. It's absolutely amazing. So I shall proceed. We're a family business. We actually set about the slides. The slides just take you on a journey of an actual natural history experience. This is what we want our customers to see, really, is that actually engaging with nature and taking them through to a product that they can actually talk about. So we're a family business. And we started out in conservation. We work with endangered invertebrates, endangered British invertebrates, and the funding for that was up and down, really, you know, unreliable. And we wanted to take control of it, make it more even. So we started to look at how we could, along with fundraising for our conservation work, and it came down to producing two-dimensional art that we can talk about and give a message about. And we felt that although there is a place for exhibitions and galleries and books and putting art on walls, the best way to get the message across was to get it out on the street and onto people who would talk about it themselves and get enthusiastic about nature. So it's a bit of a cliche, but we came down to printing our pictures on t-shirts, and I'll probably hold something up here. So we wanted to engage with children. We feel that the first step is getting people getting children into nature from the start, because research has shown that children don't become interested in natural history at a later stage, and adults don't really become that interested. They'll be specialists. They'll become keen on birds or butterflies, but not the whole of nature, and become naturalists. So we wanted to, I don't know if you can see these. So we started producing images that go with a story that would empower the children to know their clothing, so that they can, when somebody says to them, oh, that's a nice picture, what is it? They can say, well, it's a leatherback turtle. It hatches in Mexico and swims all the way to Britain, and it's endangered by plastic in the water. So the book is a rhyming book about plastic pollution, and it just gives them something to talk, so that they can talk about their clothing. I was an unfashionable child, and I haven't changed. I never thought I'd be sitting anywhere talking about fashion. But we wanted the whole thing to work with our principles. Yes, get it out onto the street, show off nature, but it had to go with our principles, which are very much conservation and environmentally minded. So we were looking for 100% organic cotton t-shirts, obviously, and the most ethical way we could find it. We're still working on that. We're still continually trying to work more and more precise ethics into it, because it's amazing what you do find out. But the whole thing was about starting conversations about conservation, about nature and the environment. And we had themes. We were looking at gateway species such as sticklebacks, which are a great way for children to engage with nature. You go to a pond, you can see sticklebacks almost everywhere. Crabs as well, rock pooling. So we wrote a story about the crab, so that they can read the stories, they can wear the t-shirts, and they become naturalists. That's that's the whole point of it. And we're starting to see that. Extinct species such as the great auk, which went extinct in 1844, and the Steller sea cow, which went extinct much more quickly before that, and then threatened species such as seahorses. And we've got a seahorse. Here we go. Seahorse.
That's one I do.
And seahorse book. So we talk about how it's actually the father seahorse that gives birth to the babies. And these are British seahorses as well. A lot of people don't realise that seahorses are around our coast. I'll try not to shove too much into the screen there. And then also more fascinating life cycles that children can get involved with, and fascinating creatures such as the octopus, which you saw, and jellyfish, which have the most bizarre life cycle. And we thought explaining that is very scientific. So we put it into rhyme so that children can point at the t-shirt and then go through the amazing process of jellyfish strobulation and actually understand it. So yeah, that's it. That brings us on to challenges, which Kerry is going to, start off.
I'm Kerry. He said most of my bit now. So.
Have I? No, surely not.
No, I think the issues with the products are the sustainable aspect and our internet connections unstable. So if we disappear, that's why. Finding, I mean, it took a while to source the right t-shirts. As Ian said, they've got to be 100% organic cotton. You made notes. I should have made notes, shouldn't I? And make sure they have no negative impacts at all. We didn't want to be ordering in and having waste products. It's just, I think then okay. So yeah, everything's done on small runs, which means that the cost's higher, and then to people it's just a t-shirt. To some people, they don't realise that the research that's gone into it, the hours of artwork that have gone into it, and you can go and buy a t-shirt from somewhere for next to nothing, can't you? So that's one thing that we found quite difficult. Yeah, and also the sort of business side of it, we're completely out of our comfort zone with. As you'll notice, there's none of our Instagram handles or Facebook things on our slides. We just shared pictures of octopuses because yeah, the business side of it isn't exactly our forte, but we're working on it. So yeah.
Yeah, so positives.
Yeah, there's been some.
We've tumbled into being a brand. You know, fashion wasn't really on the agenda. Nature was on the agenda. But positives are terrific because we found that we didn't really want to do markets. We wanted it to be as easy as possible. All we were looking at was funding the conservation projects. But it's been such an adventure, and you know, talking to children and other enthusiasts, you know, enthusiastic adults. And seeing for ourselves the gap that's there, that people don't know how to help the environment, and that you can actually help them in some small way is terrific. So then through the website and doing markets, we've been invited to exhibit at Greenpeace events. At the Green Fair in Swansea is a big one, for the Sea Trust. And this, you know, Sustainable Fashion Week is terrific. It's a real honour, and you know, amazing to be able to get the message of conservation through fashion. Is exactly what we wanted. Another thing that's probably worth mentioning is that somebody was looking for a Brittle Star T-shirt and Brittle Star art. Brittle Stars, they're like starfish. They've got those very fine legs. And because they were working on a PhD with brittle stars in the deep sea trenches far off the coast of Scotland, and what they were working on was microplastics, and they were finding in these brittle stars guts microfibers which seem to have originated from clothing, and they're full of them. The seabed is packed with these fibers that are coming out of washing machines, down the drains, down the rivers, into the sea and into the deep sea, which they thought was pristine until they started looking. They looked back then at old specimens from the 1950s, and I'm supposed to be talking about positives. This is a sort of positive. They looked back into specimens from the 1950s, and the fibers were already there, you know, close to the invention of plastics. They were already there, and to have that sort of confirmation that what we're doing, you know, makes sense, the sort of advocacy of it is a terrific positive for us, even though it's, you know, horrendous to know. So yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah, and so like every piece will tell a story, because now we've got a Brittle Star T-shirt, so that somebody can say this is a Brittle Star and tell that story themselves, and on it goes really. And it's on an organic cotton T-shirt because I'm not, you know, washing it and letting microfibers go down the drain. So yeah. I think, yeah, going forward, I think one of our main things, having said, yeah, we'll just do everything online and make it easy, we're actually looking for premises now, because it's such an amazing thing, like to connect with people, and it is the best way to sort of to get children involved and to talk to them about the creatures and why they're on the T-shirts. So yeah, for children I don't think it particularly works as a website, does it? I mean, it does, but for
no, actually talking and showing,
yeah,
you know, props, and yeah, it makes all the difference. Yeah.
But we are also on Instagram and Facebook, but we're in Lifeforms Art and Conservation on Facebook, not Lifeforms Art. That was already taken. That's a jewellery company somewhere else. So I think that's it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. I think there are a couple of questions. One from Amy. Do you give out information packs with your garments to pass the message on?
Yes. Yeah, the T-shirt, I mean, there's something we just do now with the adult T-shirts. In fact, we had ordered them to have them for the weekend, but they didn't arrive and still haven't arrived. We do what are going to be now collectible postcards. So you've got an image of the creature on the front and then all the facts on the back. And they will come automatically with the children's T-shirts, but we're now doing them for the adults T-shirts as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other questions? That was really, really interesting. I mean, I'm doing a PhD in this, and I didn't even know that the plastics were dating back from the 50s. I mean, when was it that nylon tights were invented? I think that was the 40s or the 50s. So it just goes to show how quick that actually entered into the waters. You think it's quite a modern thing, but fascinating. Thank you for that. Massive, massive insight. I'm sure I'll pass that on to my pupils, actually.
She did do a guest blog for us.
Yeah, there's a blog on the website about it.
Oh, I'm going to totally check that out tonight, I think. The research never stops, honestly. Oh, thank you so much. So yeah, if you've got any questions, we can try and tag them on at the end. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to try to pretend to be Gabby from Anesta and present her slides. So I'm going to do a very quick overview, just because I could not do it justice, to be honest. So I'm going to just be reading out the blurb that we had at the catwalk on Saturday. And there's lots of information on these slides, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind these slides being shared. But just as you remember, we are recording this, so if you ever want to read back through all of the amazing things that Anesta are doing, you really should, because they're just an amazing new company. So Anesta is a new ethical fashion brand for men and women. Each garment is ethically manufactured in Llanelli, designed by a team who pour their personality into each piece, creating timeless capsule collections that last a lifetime, and also offering inclusive sizing and the ultimate in comfort. So they only launched last year at the end of 2020, and they've gone from strength to strength, featuring on ITV News and winning the Marie Claire Sustainability Award 2021. And just last week, they actually won the Wales Startup Rising Star Award as well. So that's pretty phenomenal, considering they've only been going for probably not even a year now, I think. So Anesta is committed to having a positive impact on the fashion industry and leaving the earth a better place for it. They prioritise their values over profit and work to challenge perceptions and inspire lifestyle changes. All the garments that were showcased on the catwalk last week are thoughtfully crafted, considering every single detail right down to using recycled thread. They use quite a diverse range of fabrics, as you can see here. So Gabby is, really, really into her research into new, recycled or sustainable materials, such as even sustainably sourced seaweed. So you really should check them out. They are fantastic. And here is some information about their low carbon footprint. So I'm sure that Gabby would be more than willing to answer any questions if you've got them. She's, they're on social media on all platforms. They are, as I said, based in Llanelli, but if you want to go and have a look for them, they are Onesta _ style on Instagram, and that's probably the best place to look for them. So next, I am going to go on to Amy from Gosh Girl, if Amy is ready.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. And
Okay.
hopefully you can see your images. So I think it was 3 slides you had, wasn't it? Or was it, no, 4?
4.
Yeah, perfect. So just tell me when you want me to move forward.
Okay, thank you. So hi, I'm Amy. I run Gosh Girl. I'm a sustainable bag brand. I'm based in Cardiff. So Gosh Girl stands for groovy, original, sustainable, and handmade. And those are things that I really focus on throughout my brand. So Gosh Girl was born when I first started my degree in fashion design at the University of South Wales. It started by being my final graduate collection, which was focused on using reclaimed and secondhand materials. And that's what I made my whole collection out of. So after I finished uni, I kind of put that to the side, got a job, carried on with life, and then the pandemonium hit. So I had all the time in the world, and I decided, this is my time to shine. I'm going to start making all the things that I've been wanting to make for ages. So I made myself a little handbag. I put a photo of it on Instagram, and I had loads of people asking if they can have one, if I can make them one, and it's just spiraled from there. So in May 2020 was when I made my first collection of 10 handbags, and they were all made from fabrics that I had in my fabric stash at home. So from there, I've made around 25 collections, all using different sustainable materials, so secondhand fabrics, secondhand clothes that I've turned into bags. I've also worked with some small brands who have illustrated fabrics for me, and I've also worked with brands who have waste fabrics, and I have then turned their scraps into bags. So on the screen, there's me in the middle in my studio in Cardiff. On the one side is my logo with my tags. So one of the sustainable elements that I weave into my business is that my tags are all zero waste, and they're screen printed at home by me. So they're screen printed with non-toxic and eco-based inks. So they don't have any chemicals affecting the water systems. And they're all zero waste, so they're printed on a continuous piece of ribbon so that there's no waste left over. On the other side is a collection that I did with a brand who had waste material left over from her collections that she makes. So we patchworked a load of them together to make handbags in my style using her fabrics. Do you want to go on to the next page? So these are some of the bags that I've made over the past year and a half. There's bags, so I like to use a lot of dead stock materials. So I collect materials from eBay, Etsy. There's a lot of websites that I find online that have dead stock and end of roll fabrics. And I also hunt in charity shops, wherever I can find secondhand materials. That's what I love to use. So there's a selection of my bags there. And in the middle is one of my favorite collections, which is made from patchwork fabric that is actually a fabric that I use for my lining. So that's another sustainable part of my brand, is that my lining is all hand dyed by me, and I use eco-friendly inks, vegan, water safe friendly, so I'm not affecting the environment. And I like to dye them so each bag has an individually hand tie-dyed lining. And then this collection was a result of using all the scraps and waste left over from the linings, and I turned them into the actual outers of the bags. Do you want to go on the next slide? So here you can see my linings that I've done. They're all hand dyed. In the middle, there's the final product of our collaboration bag that I made. That's all patchwork. And then my studio in Cardiff is on the other side. Do you want to go on the next? Is there one more? Yeah, so I also take custom orders for bags. So I want to create something that is exactly what someone wants. So I love to make a custom order, so then the customer is getting exactly what they want, and they're getting a bag that they've designed and they will love and use forever. And these also made from dead stock gingham fabrics I found online. In the middle is my latest collection, which I made for secondhand September. So each bag in that image is made from an old piece of clothing. And for the whole of this month, I'm trying to force myself to use only secondhand clothes and turn them into bags. And then on the other side is my packaging. So I try and be as sustainable as I can in every single aspect of the business. So with my packaging, I use recycled boxes. They're made from recycled cardboard, and they're also recyclable. Also, I use paper packaging tape. All of my inside flyers, leaflets, tags, everything is paper-based so that it can be recycled and it won't end up in landfill. I think that's it.
And also Amy has gone completely nuts on social media. So I think you should probably say something about that. And look at the colour of me, I'm glaring from all of this amazing colour reflecting off the screen.
So yeah, I use social media 100% for my promotion of my brand. So everything I do is posted on Instagram. I think that that's the best way to show my brand. As you can see, it's very colourful. I like to also, like, on my Instagram stories, I'm very active on there because I like to show people the process of my making. So if you look on my Instagram, which is Gosh Girl, I have a lot of stories and highlights. I post every day, taking you through like a day in the life in the studio with me, showing me making bags, to show that I am the sole person who's making your clothing, which is a big part of like fashion revolution and knowing who made your clothes. So yeah, I think that's why my Instagram has grown so much, because I think people are really interested in seeing the start to finish process of how the items are made, where they come from, especially recently using like secondhand clothes. I made a reel where it started off as a funky Hawaiian shirt and then it turned into 3 bags. So I think, yeah, social media has really helped me promote my brand, and I use Instagram solely. So if you want any tips, just ask away.
Always. Yeah, and I think it just goes to show how much younger people really are thinking about these issues. You know, you hear about it a lot in the media that millennials are fueling sustainable fashion. And I think, you know, in your case, because you are so, you know, on brand and so trendy and so youthful, and I think it just goes to show that they really do have this market for younger people. So yeah, it's great to see. I've got a question here, because you don't actually have a shop though, do you, Amy? It's a studio and you supply to shops, is that right?
Yeah, so I have a studio in Cardiff. I sell solely on my website, which is you can access through Instagram. So everything's online, and I release collections kind of once, twice a month. But you got to be quick because they sell out quite quickly.
I know. I think I looked 2 days after that purple bag that's on the screen now, and it was gone.
Yeah,
like it was probably gone in about 5 minutes.
That collection sold in about 5 minutes. It was.
Oh my gosh. Crazy. Oh, it's so great to see you doing so well, because it seems like a lifetime ago since I saw you when you were at the fashion show.
I know.
Graduate. So no, it's brilliant to see you go from strength to strength. Well done, Amy. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent. So I'm going to hand over now and bring you to meet AMC. And this is the kind of finale to the evening, so no pressure. I met Anne-Marie. Well, I watched Anne-Marie actually at the Sustainable Innovations Award in April, not award, conference yeah. In April, and it was just such a joy to watch this concept that Anne-Marie has come up with, that it actually inspired me to do a lot of work with my pupils. And I don't know if you remember in the video earlier where I mentioned garment worker profiles. This was all based on Anne-Marie's work, so I thought it would be perfect to show her idea. So I'm going to stop talking and pass you on to Anne-Marie, so feel free to share your screen whenever you like.
Will do. Thank you so much, Helen, and thanks everyone for sticking around. I know we're running a little bit over time, and we've seen so many inspiring people. It's a real honour to be here with you. So just a little bit about me, and then I will show you the finale that we're building up now, so I hope you like it. So when I was little, I really used to love making mud pies outside, which consisted of mixing soil and water, and sometimes I'd decorate them with daisies. It was, you know, fantastic. And that fascination with materials continued when I was at university studying textile design, and I discovered weaving, and I'd spend hours on the loom playing with different materials. And that led me to a 20+ year career in textiles and fashion, and a little bit of interiors as well in the US and here in the UK, working for different companies. And I've worked at all different levels of the supply chain, from R&D labs through to manufacturing, garment suppliers and retailers. So I feel like I have a really comprehensive view of the industry. And what I'm doing now is I've set up Creative Range Studio, and I'm weaving together all that experience with my passion for doing better for planet and people, because that's kind of my main priority at the moment. And what we do at Creative Range Studio is we offer workshops in creative thinking and eco priorities and mindset. We also do research and writing, and we work on fun projects. So this is one project that Helen was talking about, I'm going to share with you today, that was actually inspired by a quote from William Morris, the arts and crafts pioneer, back in 1888. But I think it's still so relevant today. And his quote was all about our disconnection, our removal from the production of the things that we consume. So I started this research about our transition from producers to consumers, and I was thinking a lot about how might we reconnect with these things that we're consuming if we're not producing them. How might we understand more about how things are made, and especially about the people, the humans who are making them. So inspiration actually came from a trip to the cinema, and I always love watching a film at the end, you know, the credit reel, because I think it's a really great thing that the film industry does. They give credit to absolutely everybody who's involved in making that film, from people who run the errands through to the executive producer. So what would a credit reel look like for a garment? So that's what I've created, a credit reel for a pair of jeans, which I'm going to show you right now. Here we go. So I'll let you watch this and then we'll chat after. Right, so I probably should have said that is a made up credit reel. Those are not real people, but they easily could be, and that's something that I'm working on, is working with actual companies to do correct reels so that the actual people involved are listed. It's a prototype to show the concept, and it's not perfect. Like I thought about it today. I've actually only got one kind of sewing thread in there, whereas in jeans there's a few different types of sewing thread. But I think some things that it shows is, first of all, how long it is, like how many people are involved in a typically mass-produced pair of denim jeans. And of course, it will vary by design or company. I kept this simple. It's 100% cotton, but it could be cotton spandex. It could be a much more complicated design. But really, it's to think about those people, and there are people with lives. There are so many that are involved, and actually just starting to put it together is quite difficult, because it's like, how deep do I go? Like, do I go to the cotton seeds, you know? So anyway, I'd love to hear people's thoughts on it, and that was the finale. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, just have a look at the comments. They're amazing. I'm going to turn my light on because my light's going a bit strange here.
Oh, lovely. Well, thanks everybody. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's like when I first saw that, I told you, didn't I, like how inspiring I found that, and I thought it was such a good idea to try and communicate that to the children. And through that activity that I did, they really understood it, because I don't think they ever for 1 second imagined how many people are involved, because often maybe a designer, maybe a sewer, a pattern cutter, and that's about it really, you know, and the shop workers. But yeah, it's a ridiculously long tangled web of a supply chain. And as you say, that's not even everybody, is it?
No, it's not, but I think it just gives a taste of like how many people are involved, how many different roles.
Absolutely.
You know, so
absolutely.
Oh, thanks everyone for your comments, so kind. It's great to hear.
Has anybody got any questions for Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Anne-Marie a question.
Yeah.
As everybody said, it's so entrenched. There's a lot of professions that are involved, a lot of individuals that are involved. And, you know, I know that there are some of the high street shop who are trying to do that online thing where you can trace the garments and where they've been made and how they've been made. But you've gone into it in such details, like, you know, you see the film credits and we know how many people are involved in a film. We know about 4 or 5 stuntsmen just to do one thing, but not in that garment. So how would we express that would be useful to somebody buying something? And it's like, one of the things I've got from today is that it's the story behind the product that makes it important, makes it valuable, and makes somebody wants to hang on to it. So I'm just trying to think about ways in which you go about in giving that expression, giving that a life.
Yeah, that's fantastic points. One idea that I've got is I'm working with a couple of different companies right now to make their version of this. And for some of the, this answers a little bit of Emily's point too, for some of the roles, we don't know who that person is. And I think that highlights just how difficult it is to capture everybody involved. But one of the ideas that we've got is to bring together then the garment with this video credit reel, either online using a website or even a physical space, like I envision like an art installation where it's almost like you're shopping, but you're watching the credit reel before you make the purchase, just to really make people stop and think. But also it would be lovely then to pick some people out of that supply chain and really highlight their life and their story as well. So that could be a next iteration of life to this project. So any ideas you have, I'd love to hear them too.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, I've been looking at it, and I know that everybody's going on about blockchain at the moment, and what wonderful technology it is, and it's going to democratize everything, and everybody's going to have access to be able to use that technology to trace supply chains and to present their own stories. So, but I'm not an IT person. I'm not technological.
Yeah.
So because you've got to get that information in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
How would you tag? At what process do you tag a garment with the credits, and then you build on the credits at each stage that it goes on in the production process?
Yeah,
that to me seems entrenched, and I'd love to find out how would we do that, because that is going to be one of the things that's going to be most important for us if you want to have accountability, as we say, if you want to have transparency. And I think that is one of the key things that will help develop a more sustainable view of the way clothes are made, how we wear clothes, and possibly change production as well.
Totally. I was just thinking as you were saying that, wouldn't it be great then if some of this then could inspire simpler supply chains, so that it's not so difficult, so that we could understand everybody that is involved. Like I love the work that Emily you're doing at Carpenter and Cloth, that regionality, like that feels like it's got to be one way to go to make things a lot more transparent and easier to understand how they're made, how things are made and who's making them, and then what impacts are happening and all that good stuff.
I think that probably I think fashion is going to have to become a lot more simple. So in order for that to work, you're not going to be able to have big fashion companies that are producing an entire range of clothes, every 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's in order to make that possible, companies are going to have to specialize in jeans, or they're going to have to specialize in producing overshirts or whatever it is they do, because to be able to track every garment like that, if you've got a massive range, will be impossible. And the extra cost that that's going to add is going to have to change the structure of the business completely. So it's a massive overhaul, something like that. But it's like amazing. I think it's a fantastic concept, and I think it could really have legs. I think it's really
thank you. Yeah, I love what you said about simplification, because it is such a complex business, and very often, like I've worked at retailers as a fabric technologist, and we don't know exactly, like you can go so far down the supply chain, but then you lose sight of it, and then you don't know how far things are getting transported between different plants. You don't know exactly all the practices that are happening. There's so much that is unseen in supply chains. It's like, thank you, Emily.
That's all right. No, thank you.
I love it.
Oh yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that if you'd be prepared to answer any further questions that people might have at a later date via social media, you're in.
Oh yeah, I'll share. I didn't prepare a slide either with my contact, but I'll share my details in the chat.
You did share a film screen, to be honest. So
that's true. That's true.
That's a lot of work that I imagine went into that. So thank you for all that preparation. That's fantastic. So I'm just going to sum up now, and I'd just like to say thank you for everybody for staying. I was worried that we wouldn't have enough time, but with these conversations, it's great to just have them keep going for as long as possible, and it's great to just meet each other, and I know that there are other people that are trying out there. So I just want to share a couple of last slides just before I go, and then if anybody would like to get in touch with any of the presenters or brands, that would be great, and I'll make sure I put all of their details on social media. This video will be uploaded onto YouTube as well, and I'll provide links to all of their websites. So keep an eye out for that. It's my day off from school tomorrow, so I'm hoping I'll do it tomorrow. So I just want to talk about some next steps now to try and keep this conversation going. So, you know, we all know that Fashion Revolution Week happens in April. For those who don't, well, it does. That's the anniversary of the Rana Plaza factory collapse. But there are also some really amazing other organisations doing things all around the year. And one that I want to highlight in particular is World Circular Textiles Day. So this will be on October the 8th. They've actually got an event on World Circular Textiles Day. This is sort of headed by Professor Becky Early, who I've been honoured to be able to work with on a report that has been going on throughout the year, which will be released on October the 8th. It's called the Chariosity Report, and it looks at the charity shop sector and how, you know, they're really crucial in capturing sustainability, but also, you know, they're such an important and valuable centre of our communities. So how we can basically look after them. So have a look at World Circular Textiles Day. I'm going to pop some links in the chat in a moment if you want to go and see their visit their website. There's also, I'm hoping there's going to be another Sustainable Innovations conference that was in, I think, April of this year. So have a look out for that. I'll put the link for that website in the chat as well. And that is it from me. So if anybody wants to keep in touch, I'm on social media, SustFashWales on all platforms. There's also the website, which has the directory with all of the brands that have been mentioned and partners. So please do check it out. And if anybody has got any questions for anybody at the moment or later on, please feel free to share, just unmute yourself. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer if you need to. But otherwise, that is it from me. Thank you all so much for coming. It's just great to see, you know, lots of people trying their best to come together and make this amazing planet a much better place through the garments that we wear. So thank you, everybody. It has been a privilege to host this evening, and I do apologise for keeping you for an extra 27 minutes, but I hope you've enjoyed and I hope you have found it insightful as well.
Great, thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen, for organising. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. I'm going to just pop those links in the chat now for World Circular Textiles Day. And as I said, there is a link to that event on Eventbrite as well. So if you have a look for those, I'm sure it'll be really, really insightful. And yeah, thank you to everybody for coming. If anybody wants to pop any links in the chat, go for it. I'll be here for another few more minutes. But otherwise, thank you. And that is it for me. I'm going to stop recording now. And yeah, thank you.